inside my head. I try to turn it down, but I can't quite drown it out. I'm tortured every
Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today. You're listening to Society Bites Radio. I'm your host, Dr. Richard Himmer.
And I'm Sherry Himmer, and this is Authentically You, social interaction for the mind and soul.
So for the next 25 minutes, we talk about healing and growth from the inside out. Remember, you are 100% responsible for your happiness, joy, and well-being.
So if this is week 8, possibly for some of us, of stay at home and isolation, we are now going to work through what to do with all that isolation. We're going to give you one more week to sort things out before you're let loose into society again.
Assuming that you are.
Yeah, and that we get out. But we're going to make good use of this time and the solitude or the craziness of being home with kids, and find solitude to be able to work on this 7-day reboot. And we're going to go through it day by day.
So in the last segment, we did introduce the 7-day reboot. What's the purpose? The purpose is to find balance in a 1-week period. The way you find balance is you're doing a couple of things that are different than what you've done before. First of all, you're accepting that you're going to develop or apply a new system. Don't do it the way you've always done it. Do it differently. 1 or 2 little things at a time, not a lot.
So I love it how, we all jump into our detox diets or we detoxify our physical bodies. This is a little bit of a detox for your emotional well-being.
And instead of going to the mental gym and doing a 5-mile run with a heavy workout, I'm not suggesting that at all. I'm suggesting taking it very methodical and so in such a fashion that you actually learn from it, that you have things to talk about. Whether we get to this or not, I don't know. But there's a quote by Hyman Rickover that's powerful that I would suggest you guys could try even for an evening. His quote is, "Great minds discuss ideas. Average minds discuss
events.
Small minds
discuss people."
What if you had a dinner and the rest of the evening where you practiced being a great mind family? Just talk about ideas. At the worst case scenario, you could practice event or average mind to great mind. But if you could make it a no small mind zone for a certain amount of time, I'm just wondering what impact that would have. Now, I've got experiences where I've taught this to my clients whose spouses are not willing to be coached. And the spouses are in total resistance to this concept because they don't want to go into a great mind kind of a conversation, which is really interesting.
I know you've had some experiences where they'll even say, someone will say to another person like, "Well, I know you don't like this, but I want to tell you about what's going on with certain friends of mine." And,
right.
The husband might say, "Well, is this gossip stuff that you're going to tell me?" And, "Well, I guess, but I got to tell you. I've got to tell somebody." Right. So there's that insatiableness of talking about and operating on that small mind idea. And you have to question yourself, why is that? If you feel that, if you're feeling drawn, if you can't give it up, why is it that you're looping about other people's
So what we want
business?
To do here is give you a suggested protocol for parts of the day that you can start practicing.
And elevating yourself.
And elevate yourself to a great mind.
Yes.
All right. So day 1, and this is things that you'll need to do to set this up. So read the 7-day reboot article, which we've already reviewed with you in the last segment. Then there's going to be a worksheet. And
if you want to get to it, you can find it at himmercenter.com/resources.
And in the worksheet, it outlines all 7 days. You're going to fill out your awareness journal, and there'll be an article on awareness journal. It's there. We've covered that in depth.
There's a couple podcasts,
right.
I think, just a month or so ago that we have 2 segments on the awareness journal.
So the awareness journal so a review is what did you learn today in IQ, and EQ, what did you notice today? And this is where we're going to focus intently on this one. How did you take care of yourself? How did you put the oxygen mask on?
Or advocate for yourself.
And with teenagers, for example, it's sleep. Almost with everyone I deal with, it's first learning how to sleep healthy. And then the last thing is, what are you thankful for? Another accountability structure within the worksheet is, did you do your morning and evening mindfulness? Our intent is to cover mindfulness in detail, at least in the next podcast. I don't know if we'll get to it today. And then when you do your mindfulness in the morning and the evening, I'm suggesting that you visualize one aspect of what I call the identity statement. So on day one, you're going to visualize the what if process. So we covered what if in the last segment. You're going to visualize being of worth. So if you were to say, I'm of worth today, your critical faculty won't accept that. It'll kick it out. So you simply say, what if I'm of worth today? What does that look like? Or even this morning, for the next 2 hours while I'm working here at home, or if you're back to work, what does it look like if I'm of worth? And that's how you start your day. What if I'm my best self today? And I give you 7 different variations of how to visualize your worth. All right, so day one, go over the Reboot article and review the worksheet. Then you're going to read the Awareness Journal article, and I go into detail. Then there's a video on it as well that I cut some time ago.
So these are ways to get resources of how to do your Awareness Journal.
And then there's the podcast. So you'll have the article, the video, and the podcast. And the same thing's true for your rules of engagement. You'll have an article, and we're going to cover rules of engagement which there's a homework assignment every day on that. There's an article, a video, and a podcast. And then you're going to do mindfulness. There's an article, and there are 2 audios. One's an instruction, and the other is an actual guided. Now it'll be back. I have a dozen or so guided mindfulness audios on my website that you guys can get access to. So that's kind of how it's set up.
Are those in the resource folder as well?
I got to think where I put them. Go there. You'll know how to find them once you go there. So again, himmercenter.com/resources. And all of this is no cost. So your assignment is to listen to the audio recordings on how to do mindfulness. And then to do a mindfulness exercise in the morning and in the evening, to fill out every day the Awareness Journal, a minimum of 4 sentences. And then at the end of the last page of the worksheet, there are 8 sayings, 1 per day, and then an epilogue. Think about that saying during the day. In other words, you're elevating your mind. Talk to your family about it. Talk to your coworkers about it. What does this mean to you? How does this apply to you?
Okay, so for day one, you're saying that you would be focused on that day is if you are complacent with your goals, you are complicit with the results. And this comes from Gary Saban.
What does that mean to you, babe?
So if you're just satisfied with your goals, then you're going to fall into the same patterns. And is that really what you want? What is it that you want? It kind of opens up, am I complacent and complicit with what has been the status quo for myself?
So think of the spouse who knows her husband is working on the Hyman Rickover quote, wants to have elevated conversations, wants to always be, as much as he can possibly, talk about ideas and events at the worst case. And the wife simply sabotages and says, I know you don't like talking about gossip, but that's what I want to talk about. Okay, so she's complacent with who she is. So she's complicit in the fact that she's not happy, and she's not. So that's all I'm suggesting.
Yeah, and another example would be to apply that to, like, let's say your physical health or fitness, and are you, what goals, do you have any, and are you complicit with the results of said goals or lack of goals? So
if whatever, if that's your attitude, or it's just not that big a deal, you're discounting the positive, you're valuing the negative. All of these are part of the process that neuroscientists have now determined. Why are we tripping up over life? Why are we tripping up over connecting? Because we are putting our value in things that bring us a temporary drug. Gossip is a temporary drug. It's a maladaptive behavior, and it's the manifestation of a false narrative. Okay, so that's day one.
Okay.
You just do a basic mindfulness in the morning, then mindfulness in the evening. Do your awareness journal to kind of get the feel for it, and then fill things out. Now, day 2, we start being very specific. So on day 2, you're going to do your morning mindfulness, and you're going to focus, and this is where you get into the EQ of it. What are you going to notice? Focus on conversations at home or at work where people offer unsolicited advice or criticism. Don't make any comments. Don't judge. Just refrain from it. Simply notice that it happened and give it a name. So if you hear someone, for example, giving some unsolicited advice or a comment, simply say in your mind, oh, that was unsolicited
You're
criticism.
just taking a notation mentally inside. You're not judging them.
And the power there is simple.
Because right now you're in the act of raising self-awareness.
That's what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And awareness leads to regulation. So and it's easier to notice it in someone else before you notice it in yourself. So if you, and by the way, unsolicited criticism is ubiquitous. You don't have to go far or wait long before you hear it.
Mm-hmm.
If someone says, well, if it were me, or hey, do you want to hear some advice on that? It's everywhere. So what I'm asking you to try is simply hear it. Pay attention to how you feel when you hear it. This is very important. And then simply note it. I noticed that.
Don't respond.
Don't make a comment, and don't try to think, well, that person's a jerk. If you think that, just go, wait a minute. I don't know their story. I don't know what's going on there. I simply know that's unsolicited criticism. What if I can simply just be neutral here?
Yeah, you're really just taking this as an observation experience.
Right.
Because the one you're working on is yourself. You're not working on those that are, you're going to find them everywhere.
Eventually, what you'll do is you'll start noticing in yourself. So a quick story. I was collaborating with a group of people on training the Washington State
Police.
Academy, the police academies. But we were training the leaders statewide. And I taught this to the two people that I was working with. Well, one of them, the lead on this one, actually had to fly back east to a family get-together the next week. And I didn't see her for a couple of weeks. When she came back, she says, I really don't like you. I smiled at her. I said, what'd I do? She says, well, that thing about unsolicited. Oh, hers was relating. We'll get to that in a second. But hers was relating. She said, yeah, I went to a family get-together. We were having a bridal shower. And I realized how much my sister relates. And it was starting to bother me to the point I didn't like my sister. By the time that evening was over, I didn't like her at all. Then we went home that night, and then it dawned on me, I'm relating. And I didn't like me. And because I didn't like my sister and I didn't like me, I had to go to the source of why I didn't like my sister and why I didn't like me. And that's why I don't like you.
Well, it sounds like a Pandora's box. And yes, you could find yourself opening up a few Pandora's box. You're there and you're doing this to observe neutrally because you are working on yourself.
And keep in mind, and this is because I've done this so much, I know that's going to happen. You probably will get frustrated. You may get more angry at your parents. You may get angry at your siblings. You may get angry at your husband or your wife or whoever. It's going to happen. But keep in mind, the only reason you're frustrated is because you're actually projecting onto them your own false narrative. So the minute you get frustrated with someone else, just keep in mind, you're only manifesting what you yourself don't like about you. All right. So now day 2 is completed. You'll do a mindfulness in the evening. You'll fill out your awareness journal and simply notice people who are offering unsolicited advice.
And then the saying that you're going to use for conversation piece and to consider for yourself is effortless power versus powerless effort.
This comes from Scott Morgan. He's a PGA Tour. And, I'm picking up golf for the last 3 years, and that kind of meant a lot to me because the harder I swing, the shorter the ball flies. The more pure I swing with no effort, the better it goes. So I did have one good experience here. This is not a brag. It's just that it happened. So when I went golfing the day before, all the golf courses in the state of Washington were shut down. As soon as I heard about that, I just went to the golf course and got on.
One more
I'm a single. And so I went out there and I was driving my car. They have 2 18-hole courses at this golf course at Gold Mountain. And I golfed all sets of the